I think the judges should have a certain amount of time of experience under their belt, meaning they've gone to a MMA gym and they've had at least a year of training in different arts, and the gym owners can kind of like sign off on it and kind of like an affidavit type of thing. I think there should be a more rigorous process for them than to just someone could just come off their couch, and if they have a friend who's on the commission and they just say, hey, I'm interested in doing this, I've been watching a couple fights, how can I get involved? And they just get a seat at the table like that. I just don't think is right for fighters who put so much time and energy into getting into the sport and getting to UFC, ONE FC, Bellator, to get to any of those top promotions, and then have a guy or girl who does this for a hobby. It's a hobby. It's a side gig. It's not something that they take serious, and it probably doesn't pay enough for them to take it that serious. But for us, this is our livelihood. For them, they can show up drunk. They can show up high. We don't know. We don't know any of these things. I'm not saying that they do, but I'm pretty sure there probably has been situations where people probably had a couple drinks before they came in and sat down cage side. So I think that's one thing that should be done. And I think the fighters should be able to appeal and not have their appeals thrown out because the commission feels they're above. Like even the fight with Merab and Ricky Simon, very controversial. The commission denied him any chance of having that appeal. Why? Based on what? What is your reasoning for not even listening to what happened? You're going to stand by your referee's decision just like that? The ref didn't even wave it off. It's after the fight, Merab gets up and he says, I'm fine. And the ref looks at him. He sees that he's fine. He walks away. He goes talk to I think Mark Goddard or whoever it was he talked to. And they come back and they rule the fight a TKO loss. I'm like, that makes absolutely no sense. The fight's over. You did not wave the fight off. That should be a clear-cut win for our guy. But it's things like that, man, that we have no power in controlling, no say. And it's like we're doing all the heavy footwork, and you guys are just giving us a state to fight in, and you guys get to say everything that we can and cannot do without us having any type of voice. And I'm not saying a union, but maybe an association where fighters can have some collective rights, as we can be the overseers of who's qualified enough to be a judge. We should have some type of insight to be like, all right, the top guys in the association feels maybe it's a body of 10 people of council, and we go, all right, we deem this person eligible or have passed enough training to be like, okay, they should be allowed to judge fights. Trevor Giles versus James Krause. Why is there a judge who's not recruiting himself that's worked with Trevor Giles? I'm sure Trevor's a great dude, but he probably shouldn't have won that fight. And he probably shouldn't have had his, I don't want to call him his friend, but maybe his colleague or former training partner judging his fight. It's just, I don't know, there's just a lot of common sense things that can be fixed, and I think people are making like this is such a rocket scientist thing to fix. It's not. The solution is right there in black and white. I think I don't think it's hard to tell that we need to have some type of criteria for what can deem somebody eligible to be a judge or a referee.
I think they need to get more experienced judges, I guess, or like there definitely has to be like some standard for being a judge. Like now, I think it depends state by state, but I think you can just apply with the state to get a little license to be a judge for a fight, and then you just, talk to the promoters and get in. Like that's not much of a standard. I think like the people need to have some sort of experience. I don't know how we'd kind of figure that out, but I think that would definitely help. Because I've definitely seen some weird judging stuff. Obviously, with some of the more recent cards, there's been a lot of that. I think the idea of online scoring would be interesting, but I don't know how well that would work out if people had like a huge favorite that they wanted to win. I don't know if people would be able to kind of be, like objective about that and not like sway it just because they have a specific fighter that they like.
I think the simplest solution is more judges and live scoring. Hold them accountable every round. Maybe instead of having 3 judges like boxing, because this isn't boxing, maybe we have 7, you know, or just because you're gonna get more consistency the more people you have. I mean, boxing is a 2-weapon sport. You know what I mean? You can punch with your left and your right hand. MMA is so much more. You need a broader a broader audience. You know what I mean? To be able to score it, because everyone sees something different. If you take a boxing judge and you have them watch an MMA fight, they only see boxing. They're watching the fight, you know, with one hand over their eye. They don't actually know what the fuck is going on. And that's just sad. That's sad that we're at this level, and MMA and the UFC has evolved so fast that the athletic commissions and no one can really keep up. But I think the easy solution is for the UFC to have 3 judges that kind of go everywhere with them, in addition to whatever athletic commission. That way things can kind of start weighing out. I think that's the simplest solution, but I mean, it's a pretty complex problem. So athletic commissions don't like working with outsiders. I mean, there's a lot of politics involved, and I'm no dummy to that. It's complex.
That's a good question. I have a lot of them. One is I want to see points get taken when guys miss weight. Maybe not points, but a point I think should get taken if guys miss weight. That part is just as much of a fight as it is the actual fight. So if you're going in with a huge advantage, then you should be deducted a point. And missing weight and being heavier is a huge advantage. So that I would like to see changed. The judging has to really change. I think that they need to do something about how, if there's a foul, how you can't talk to your coaches. That seems ridiculous to me. If I get poked in my eye and I can't see out of my eye, I don't want to bear the burden of me having to make the decision in front of millions of people of whether or not I should fight. I don't want that burden while I'm in the middle of a fight. It seems like I would make an emotional decision, which I see all the time. Like, look at Stefan Struve and his last fight. He got kicked in the nuts, like, I think 3 or 4 times, and then got knocked out in the 3rd because he was so hurt from that. And I want the coaches to be the ones that make those decisions. I think it's completely ridiculous that you can't talk to your corner when there's a foul. I want the number, and they might have done this, but I don't know if they've really committed to it, is the damage needs to be number 1 criteria for who's winning. I'd take a fight like Austin Hubbard's last fight last weekend in Vegas, and what's the guy's name? Mersad or something? Mark Madsen. Madsen held him for 2 rounds, and then Austin beat him up in the 3rd. And if I was leaving that cage, I'd rather be leaving as Austin than the other guy. And I think that kind of sucks. Like, just holding and pinning someone against the cage, to me, is not winning a fight. That's not what we're here doing. We're here to hurt each other, and you're not hurting me by just pinning me against the cage. So that's really got to change. And as far as the judges goes, I think the judges need to be UFC caliber judges. Imagine you're a Joe Schmo who just corners at local fights, or not corners, but judges at local fights. And then the UFC is coming to your state, and you know just as much as you know, and you have all of that pressure on you to make the correct decision. Because imagine, man, it's not like it's incredibly smart people judging these fights. You know, it's like it's state commissions, and they're judging these really high level fights, and I just don't think that they really know enough. You know, is that all of them do that? No, but I think that just like how the UFC brings in a lot of their own refs, they need to bring in a lot of their own judges too, because it's too much pressure for an average guy who usually just judges local fights, and now he has to go do this big show like that. You're throwing him, you know, you're just throwing them to the sharks, and I think that that's unfair for them, and I think it's unfair for us, where there's a lot of money and a lot of like really big changes in your life that could happen. Like, look at Dom and Jones. If Dom wins that fight, his entire life is changed for the rest of his life. And you have just this average judge from the state cornering it. That seems insane to me. So, but I could go on and on all day about that. So,
this is a great question. But you know, for me, in my career, I don't have one problem. I know I have to be better every fighter. because it's sad when you lose a fight. It's not because you lose the fight, but because sometimes it's bad judge, don't agree each other. Then have to change something, between them for learn and improve, for be better judges in the fights.
Yeah, well, I would absolutely think that the judges should be more knowledgeable with, the MMA, sport, making sure that they know what all the dominant positions when it comes to jiu-jitsu, what they know what it means to be able to pass the guard or, just like advance in positions and like that. Or when you get a takedown and whether you secure it or if somebody reverses. I think it's very important for them to be knowledgeable in everything, even when it comes to striking as well. As far as the scoring, I think it would be great. I think they tried it for Invicta for the first time, and Max Holloway got to be involved with that. And I think they had some showing the scores behind the fighters, and only the coaches can see it. So it's kind of up to them on whether the fighters wanted to know or whether the coaches wanted to share that or not. And I think it went pretty well. I mean, if we know anything about how us athletes, how we work, motivation and stuff like that, sometimes when or someone's pushing you or they tell you or you just get that little bit of information, you can just push a little bit more. Sometimes you think you have the fight won. Sometimes you think you did it a little bit more. But if it's someone tells you, no, you're far behind, you better go out there and beat this girl's ass right now, then you go. I mean, we've seen it too, sometimes maybe even coaches can just play that, and tell them, even without the scoring. We've kind of seen that with Aspen Ladd. She was kind of winning the fight, but then, Jim West went in there and just kind of gave her a pep talk and was like, you got to go out there and just beat her up right now, and she was losing the fight, but she went out there and she just, so I think it would help a lot. I think it would help with the performances that'll come out, and so I'm for the open scoring.
I do like the open judging, but I feel like if you do the open judging, you also have to have a yellow card, red card system or some kind of punitive, some punishment for people trying to run and stall out in that last round. Say I'm up 2 rounds. I would never fight like this, but we've seen people fight like this. They're up 2 rounds, and the 3rd round, they do next to nothing because the fight's in the bag. They just have to not get finished. So if they're stalling or running or whatever, then there needs to be some kind of, you need to be getting in trouble for that. Also, former fighters, maybe not necessarily current fighters, but former fighters who don't have anybody on the card, who don't coach anybody or train with anybody who's on the card, be judges. Because I think you see boxing judges score a fight differently than somebody who's never fought before. So I think there just needs to be consistency in the judging.
That's the last one you said, get MMA fighters in there, and that would probably be the best thing. Now, honestly, yeah, the judging's been all over the board lately, so that's why my plan is to not put it in the judges' hands for my fight.
I think that's difficult. I think it's difficult. Even if you have open scores, you're going to confuse the fighter. And fighter as judges, I don't think that's a good idea. Because every fighter is going to have a favorite. And yeah. I think it's fine how it is.
It's no different than what Herb did, where he created a wrestling a reffing program, right? So these judges should have a uniformed program, a system across the board that goes everywhere. If you want to be a MMA judge, you have to learn this thing, and maybe it's a booklet. It's a booklet, and there's a certification, and you can read about it. Maybe if you didn't perform it, in which a lot of our think about it. How many people train professional athletes that are not professional athletes, but they educated themselves properly? So I think it's an education problem, and it's a system problem that, again, we've created this national ID, for MMA fighters to have. There should be one for all of them. To obtain a national, judging, or to even be a part of judging, you should have to have all the same exact accolades across the board.
With that original flow, head kicks with the pros, picks up the fights or anything in the mix. Getting closer to the heart of the flame, bringing conversations with heavy hitting names. You feel the love of the game.